Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stuart Andrew Alexander.
Hello everybody, this is Stuart Andrew Alexander back again with another impact-making guest, Bill Genovese. He helps IT organizations provide accelerated and sustained value for the business by identifying and optimizing what they already have to solve their problems, aligning the business goals and strategy tighter to IT, and identifying tactical and simplified strategic solutions. This results in improved outcomes for the business so it can grow and take advantage of this new technology. He has a proven track record comprised of leadership through consulting, design, and implementation of infrastructure, applications, and core systems on an enterprise scale for global organizations. Now, prior to WGroup, Bill worked at IBM for over 10 years. In his most recent role, he was the executive architect and client technical leader at TIAA-CREF, where he provided technical counsel to the CIO and other key business and technical executives on strategy, direction, and critical programs and projects. In this role, he was responsible for increasing the value that clients derive from the application of new and existing technologies in order to accelerate innovation. Effective in 2015, Bill is also a CTO and executive board member at Saving Promise, a national non-profit organization whose charter is to help prevent and change domestic violence in America. And he's here today, ladies and gentlemen, to talk to us about some of the problems, some of the obstacles and misconceptions, even some of the pitfalls and fears surrounding the individuals and organizations he helps the most. So, with that said, let's welcome him to the show. With over 22 years of experience in his industry, Chief Technology Officer, Principal Executive Consultant and Chief Technology Architect of WGroup, William, but as he prefers to be called, Bill Genovese. Bill, are you there? Welcome to the show.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Stuart, for having me.
Briefly, in your own words, Bill, can you just describe who is your perfect prospect? Who are the people out there that you help?
Yes, there's really a number of them, but I tend to zero in or focus in on, in terms of the organization, the CIO's team or the CIO himself or herself. And really what I do there, and I've been doing this for several years, not only with WGroup but with IBM, and to some degree before that with KPMG going back some years, I help the CIO and his organization or her organization get the best value and return on investment out of their technology investments by looking at what they already have, like you said, but identifying areas that they may have missed or where they can reuse for more than one purpose. And this usually surfaces in the area of modernization initiatives, which results in optimization. And many times as well, shoring up the infrastructure where there might be, some situations where it's not as stable as it should. So resiliency comes into the picture as well. And in terms of an enabler in the organization to help make this happen, okay, and carry it forward, I look for and assess the maturity of the enterprise architecture function or organization. And that group, working with the CIO and his or her team, is very, very paramount and critical to success. All of this coming together, all of these ingredients, quote unquote, for the cake, typically will result in an accelerated outcome for the business and their strategy and goals.
Okay, Bill. So when you think about these CIOs that you work with and the organizations that you work with, Can you please share 2 or 3 common obstacles that you find prevent them from achieving their desired outcome of getting the best value and return on investment on their technology investments through the modernization, optimization, and resiliency that you talked to them about?
Right. And the number one obstacle that I come up against is really perception-based. And, it carries over from our daily lives as well. Keeping up with the neighbors, you want to have the shiny new thing in your home or your driveway. The same extends to business. So there's new technology out there. There's cloud, there's digital, there's big data, quote unquote. And the obstacle is the perception around, to move to modern technology. Okay, it's going to cost the organization a lot. So this is where, transactionally and short-term thinking, tactically, cost or the perception of cost gets in the way. And the other aspect of this, or the other dimension of it is, if it's enterprise-wide or enterprise impacting in terms of a technology solution, it will cost quite a bit versus, being very, very tactically oriented. That's number one, the first obstacle. So obstacle 2 that I come across is in the area of the fear of the unknown and then the fear to fail, which are really tied together. Many large-scale enterprises do have the tendency, or can have the tendency to fail, because a lot of them are venturing into new territory in terms of a new technology that's being applied to solve a business problem or strategy. And along the way or along the journey, the organization, the CIO, is obviously watching his or her peer groups and his or her peer group organizations, and also the industry they're in. So they're very, very cautious, and sometimes it tends to make them a bit overcautious and embracing new approaches to old problems. So that's really the second obstacle I've seen and come across. Mm-hmm. Obstacle 3 is really cultural, and it really is cultural in the sense that the culture tends to dictate the atmosphere or the acceptance of change in the organization. So think status quo here. So for example, I'll give you an example. The company's healthy, it's making money, but thank God, to date there hasn't been any issues in terms of a data breach or a significant infrastructure outage, even though the infrastructure may not be, up to par in terms of its currency and in terms of its, relevance to modernization. So this can result in complacency, and typically the culture, is a resistor to change anything, and you get into a comfort pattern, and that becomes an obstacle.
Could you name an example, obviously keeping client confidentiality into consideration, could you name an example of an organization that you've worked with that, they adopted this common status quo, everything's fine, we've no need to do anything. Could you just share one example of that and what actually happened when things did come crashing down?
Yeah, I've come across this as more than one example, not only in my first-hand dealings with my clients, but also in the media and the news. I mean, you hear, not too long ago, this was in the past year at any rate, a major nationally known U.S. retailer had a very significant data breach, okay? And the nature of the data breach, was through the HVAC or heating and air conditioning system, okay? So it's really, and that's an area, you can kind of say is complacency. So not all the I's were dotted, not all the T's were crossed in terms of integration and interaction between those systems and the core systems of record of the organization. Now, I've come across this in my own dealings with clients in the sense, and it's really surfacing in the area of technology refresh or keeping things current in the data center on the infrastructure side. servers themselves, using that as an example, they tend to have pretty long lifetime or lifespan or mean time, before repair, which is the metric. But things do fail. I mean, your car breaks down, servers break down as an example as well. And I've seen, many occasions where customers or clients have not refreshed them and modernized them, and it resulted in very significant business system outages that were impacting their customer. Then the panic sets in, because when that happens, it's impacting their bottom line. Another example, too, say healthcare or a healthcare system. That's completely different. You cannot afford to take those systems down due to an outage, because people's lives are at stake. Okay, and it's just that boggles my mind how outdated some of the technology in that industry is right now, and really does need to be modernized.
Okay, thanks for giving us that insider, say behind the scenes look into that common obstacle in just settling for the status quo because everything's fine. I think that's a really important point for you to shine the spotlight on, and maybe give some of the CIOs or some of the organizations that are listening to your interview, Bill, maybe just to give them a moment of pause just to think about their current situations. So with that said, again, when you think about the CIOs, the organizations that you work with, what are 2 to 3 popular misconceptions that they may have about achieving their outcomes, achieving their goals?
Yeah, very good question, and this kind of ties together with kind of the answers of my observations and my working with their organizations that I've seen and what I've said already. Number one, back to stability and resiliency. The misconception there is okay, if they do recognize that they need to do something, and it's usually reactive, due to a data breach or a system outage, the misconception is it's going to cost us a lot more money. It's almost like a net new budgeted expense that has to be accounted for that they didn't have before. So that's a misconception. Another misconception is that to get more resilient and more stable and become an always-on world-class infrastructure organization, you need all new people. We're venturing into new territory. New skills are going to be needed on my staff, and I don't have that right now to take advantage of this new technology. The third misconception is it's kind of a balancing act, and back to the status quo, and in the sense that it's better to play it safe and maintain status quo and maintain overall organizational happiness, right, or personnel happiness, than introducing any disruptive change, and that can be financial or otherwise.
That's tantamount to staying in a bad relationship, then, is it not, Bill?
Absolutely.
And the other misconception that you mentioned, that they buy into this thought that they would need new staff as they're taking on new things within their organization. Can you just expand on that? If that's a misconception, then what's the alternative to that then, Bill? Well,
the misconception is as you're introducing, as an example, give it another example, more automation, virtualization of physical infrastructure, because it becomes more virtualized, and you're introducing more automation. The staff, the IT staff that's been supporting the existing infrastructure, and the CIO and the IT director is aware of this, can be a bit sensitive. Okay, well then what am I going to be doing in the new organization if I'm introducing more automation and I'm virtualizing more servers? So, quote unquote, they don't need me anymore. But it's really not a matter of also skills, okay, and their skills are tied to an older technology that the organization's tied to and cannot move away from, because where technology's gone and from existing technology to new technology, the individuals supporting this are picking up on the newer technologies. They have to, okay. It's just a natural progression, and the organization, the CIO needs to kind of recognize how the individuals can be kind of repurposed or retooled to kind of move into the new direction. Okay, in some cases, that's not the biggest obstacle, but it's certainly prevalent.
That's certainly an interesting point of view there, Bill. So thanks for sharing that with us. When you think about getting the best value, this is something that you help the people you work with. You help them to get the best value and the ROI out of their technology investments. When you think about that, what would be 2 or 3 pitfalls that you could share with them while they're out there trying to pursue those goals?
Very good question and point. One of the pitfalls that I've seen is the tendency to embrace a new technology or trend just to have it. So that's the other side of the coin, okay? Keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. I want to have that new, shiny new toy in the toy box because I want myself as a CIO and representing my organization to be seen publicly as we're cutting edge. And that's fine, okay? But the missing aspect may be the tie back to the business and the business strategy. That's not surfacing. So great that you're introducing the new technology, but what are you doing to enhance the business experience or deliver business goals? So pitfall 2, going along those same lines, is embarking on this very significant technology change without having proper governance or a design function in place to help guide it and deliver it and temper the impact of the change to the organization. So, that's kind of, making sure that you're proceeding cautiously and carefully in getting that new technology in place, but also ensuring that it ties back to and aligns to the business strategy. So that's the benefit of enterprise architecture. And then number 3, in terms of a pitfall, is really, once again, rushing ahead to get into the new technology without taking a look at hidden vendor licensing fees or constructs that can lock a customer and the CIO and his or her organization into a very specific proprietary vendor technology under the guise of saving large amounts of cost by going single source. And I've seen this play out a number of times. So a vendor will come in and say, we can do everything for you in your IT organization and help your business. But then they kind of get locked in, the company, the organization, the CIO, and the business get locked in to a single vendor, and they can't get out because they're kind of locked into that very proprietary technology. And the vendor can't take advantage of that in terms of licensing costs and increases, therefore. So,
I could imagine that would cause a huge problem, especially if you get locked in with a company who are not delivering satisfying results. That must be a really stressful situation to be in. Could you just expand a little bit on that for us, please, Bill? I know you've seen this happen before, but could you just give us an example of what happened? What were the consequences?
Well, yeah, this kind of ties back to, the obstacles as well as the pitfalls, okay?
Right.
In terms of an example of people, okay, and the fear of the unknown and moving forward, you can kind of convince your staff, potentially, look, we're going to embrace this new technology, but it's more or less an extension of what they've already been doing in terms of a technology, and it's not too disruptive of their world. So it kind of locks them into, a little bit of a step forward, but it doesn't allow them to take advantage of other technologies that may be better suited for what the business wants. Okay, so it's kind of a pacifier for the IT organization. Okay, we'll kind of stay on, for example, x86 or Wintel, Intel-based platforms. And we'll go to, the virtualization of that and, treat it kind of as a commodity and assume that every single workload or every single application that the business needs will run just fine on that type of infrastructure solution. Well, that's just not true. Okay. You can't generalize that and say, any type of workload for any industry will run on one single platform or one choice. Okay. And that's where the lock-in comes in. and once again, complacency. So they may try it via a pilot or a POC, or they may have had some success in the past running it long term, and they move more and more workloads or applications to that one platform, okay? Until there's an outage or until there's a breach or something, and then they second guess their decisions along the way. So I've seen that play out quite a few times, actually. So.
Okay, Bill, you've been 22 years in the industry, is that correct?
Correct, yep. Yeah, between 22 and 24, if I'm doing my math correctly, yeah.
22 to 24 even. That's a long time. And in that period of time, Bill, you must have seen literally almost everything there is to see. But within your experience, what are 2 to 3 of the most common fears that prevent the CIOs and the organizations that you work with from achieving their desired outcomes? Could you just possibly expand on that for us, please?
One thing I will say back to what you just said, I've seen a lot, correct. I cannot ever say that I've seen everything, because every client, this is what's very interesting about my work, every client that I've been on and worked with has introduced a new wrinkle to the same problem in some case. So I've seen a lot of common themes and a lot of common problems that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But there's always a new wrinkle, a new angle to it. Okay,
right.
And most of it's cultural or people. Okay, and that really ties to my first fear that I've come across with them in terms of commonality, and it's letting the vendor in, letting the advisor in, and how the organization reacts to that. So for example, the organization is very, very sensitive to pick up on whether outside parties are coming in to help them or not. Okay. And, the perception I've seen or the fear that rises is, well, why are these people coming in? How is it going to impact my livelihood and my longevity in my company? Is something broken here? Am I doing something wrong that we need outside advice, that we can't move forward ourselves? Okay. The second thing is, once again, cost or fear. Any significant change at all will cost more money than what we had planned and budgeted for. So even if we didn't think about it and it was a mistake on our part, we're not going to surface that. We'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it in the next budget cycle if it vets out as a needed thing or item that we need to bring in a solution. The third piece is the process and approach in terms of fear along the time. Quote unquote, we don't even have enough time to complete our day-to-day activities to stay afloat. How are we going to introduce change to move to new technology to make our lives easier, to improve or optimize? So once again, that's the complacency and the status quo. I've always found ways with my clients and customers to carve out extra time out of their 8-hour day and show where they can save time in terms of process or approach to move to new technology and leverage many times what they already have or purchased. So interesting. Like I said, new wrinkles to old problems, but most of it is organizational or people or culture that you've got to overcome.
Excellent, and thank you for correcting me there, Bill. Appreciate that. Just find that in a lot of industries, I speak with a lot of different people on this radio show, and most of them, I guess, always say the problems they hear are across the board always the same, but the clients believe that they are unique. So thank you for correcting me on that there is a slight twist to every different client situation. So the next question I have for you, Bill, it's whenever I ask it, it kind of feels a little bit, I always kind of a little funny feeling in my stomach, because it's kind of an obvious question, but it's a question that your listeners are going to want to hear the answer to from their perspective. So when you think about the people who you work with, Bill, why would they want to achieve this outcome of getting the best value and ROI on their technology investments?
Yeah, very, very good question. My experience here is they want to achieve the outcome because of the earn improved outcome because of driven by mistrust over the years. Okay, and either due to the business feels constrained by IT, okay, and cannot move forward and get new products out to market as fast because IT is not moving as fast to enable them to do so. And they're not getting the results that they need on the business side because of a perceived constraint by IT. They also want to, in this day and age of data breaches and outages related to that, they want to feel more confident in IT that things are stable and protected and reliable, okay? So if they do venture out, okay, and you hear the term shadow IT or running workloads that the business picks up and directly outside of IT's control and in public cloud type arrangements or software as a service, and shadow IT organizations are popping up. Well, this is the business kind of reacting a bit and feeling empowered. Well, look, we've got to go out and do what we need to do, and we cannot wait around for IT to deliver or enable that for us. So, they're bringing their own devices into work. They're bringing their smartphones in. They're bringing, their iPads in. They want to be able to work from home. The workplace is no longer, 9 to 5 people are just working in the walls of the organization. They're bringing their work home. They're working from home. They're accessing company information via their smartphone in some cases, and their iPads and their own personal laptops. But they want to do this, and they want to feel safe that they can do it. Because the prevalence of outages and data breaches, is putting some people on edge. So, they want an improved outcome. They really do, I think, want IT to be their partner, but they want to be able to regain trust that they may have lost with IT.
So, Bill, let me ask you a personal question at this stage. Are you having fun on this interview, Bill?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime that I can talk about my passion, okay.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. And talk freely about it and open. This is the vehicle or the opportunity to kind of do so. And it is a passion of mine. It's bringing, the technology side to the business because, once again, what I said earlier, to have the sake of new technology for the sake of new technology is great to have that shiny new toy, but what are you trying to achieve? Okay.
Exactly.
And that plays out in my personal life too. I mean, I've been for example, an Apple fan since day one. I still have the original first release of the iPhone. My wife and I do. We track very carefully. Well, what's the new release going to give us over the previous release? How does it make things better for us?
So, I mean, it's been a great interview so far, Bill, and I do feel that passion that you have for the people that you love to help the most. That has certainly come over during this interview with the way how you've positioned yourself as an educator and as an advocate for your prospects and your client success. So, I really want to commend you for doing that and not coming on here and talking all about Bill Genovese and how great you are and your lifestyle and how much money you make. No, you've come on here and you've been an exemplary educator and advocate. So thank you for that. So with that said, Bill, now that we know who you have this greatest passion for helping, you've spoken about some of their most common obstacles, some of the popular misconceptions that they may have bought into, the harmful pitfalls they should be aware of. You even address some of their fears that may hold them back, as well as some of the emotional and logical reasons that you just touched on about why they would want to achieve their desired goals. So now that we know all of that, Bill, let's talk a little bit about your solution. And this is a question, it has about 651 questions in one sentence, okay? So what is your solution, Bill? What is it exactly? Does it have a name? Does it have a brand? What made you come up with the idea or the company you work for? What inspired you to help the kinds of people that you work with today? So in short, to encapsulate all of those questions, just tell us a little bit about your backstory and how it links to what you are doing today and the solution that you have.
Well, once again, it ties back to the overall theme of aligning business with the technology side of the house, okay? And the solution in that area, if produced correctly and put in place correctly, both from an organization perspective, an approach or process perspective, and as well as tooling to support it, is enterprise architecture. Okay, but you cannot go into an organization and expect that to happen overnight. So typically what I'll do is my solution and the company that I'm working for now, the WGroup, which very, very good example of doing this too, we'll go in and we'll put together kind of a state of the union for the customer. And based on our collective experience, I'm one of the few individuals. Many of us are former CIOs and CTOs or existing CTOs on a part-time basis, like myself. We've seen it, and we've seen what works and what doesn't work. So we bring that knowledge to bear, and we can put together kind of a benchmark in terms of maturity. We'll lay out a very, very actionable plan for a client to get there based on their very specific business drivers and goals, okay? So at the highest level, what's the company's vision for the next 10 or 20 years? And then tactically breaking that down, how do they get there? Both from a business perspective, but most importantly, how is technology going to enable them to get there as fast as possible? So, and I do this, like I said, identify the vision, the top 5 drivers from the business, and then use architecture tactically and strategically to deliver against that. Define your initiatives, and then what changes will be necessary in further detail to make that happen. While I'm doing this, though, another thing as part of my solution, complex topics or technologies may be introduced, either by the vendors that are circling around the customer, or even myself or others, but we break down that complexity and make it simple, and I've done this a number of times by identifying use cases that are very, very specific to the vision or the challenges that the business are trying to solve. So you can take a very complex technology and say, well, don't understand it, but here's how it's going to help you in terms of a use case. Here's how you're going to apply it. Once we start doing that and illustrating that, then the light bulbs start going off and adoption is increased. And some of those fears and obstacles that I mentioned earlier start to dissolve.
Okay, Bill. So finally, if there is a CIO who's listening to your show right now, or an organization, or somebody representing an organization, maybe an HR director that wants to bring you in and speak to their employees, or an event organizer that may be interested in you coming and doing some public speaking, or maybe even an investor or a vendor or any other kinds of key business decision makers who are listening to this show and they want to connect with you, how would they go about doing that? Where would they find you?
The first thing I'd like to say in terms of approachability, most of my career, it's been pretty widespread in terms of who I engage with in terms of corporation size and complexity. So I've dealt with, obviously the top Fortune 50, but also very, very small or medium organizations as well. So I'm very approachable. My new organization is very approachable to engage with, to help organizations. So that's another fear too. You get a high-paid consultant or any type of outside consultant, they're only going to want to work with the top 100 or Fortune 50. And for me personally, that's not true. I mean, I've worked with smaller organizations all the way up to massive internationals. Companies can find me and individuals can find me. I use LinkedIn quite a bit. I have a pretty solid network, global network established there. I have testimonials and recommendations for my work with my former company and building those now with my new company. And it's just simply, looking for my name on LinkedIn, William Genovese. And I'm very, very happy to connect. I'm more or less an open networker, okay? And I believe in the, connection and establishing a network for the better good for everybody. So I can typically be found there. You can also find me on my new company's website, WGroup, and that is thinkwgroup.com, just how it sounds phonetically. And we have a people section there, so you can take a look at my constituents, my colleagues, as well as myself in terms of bio and background. And then I also have a personal website that I've set up to kind of, illustrate my portfolio over the years, my experience in helping companies. And that's on maven.com. And you can find me there as well. I have a profile on that website too.
Perfect. Bill, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. So before we leave, Bill, do you have any final thoughts? Because I think you've done an excellent job of making a technical topic sound so interesting, so intriguing. Personally, it's not my field. Obviously, the show is not for me. It's for the people who you work with, the people you have a passion around. But you still, just through your honesty and just being so humble and being so educational and informational, you did an excellent job of providing a great resource for people to listen to in the future. So with that said, Bill, do you have any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Yeah, number one, I'd like to thank you very much, Stuart, again, for giving me this opportunity. Hopefully it'll enable some of my existing clients as well as former clients and new clients to learn about myself and my new company and organization. And, I've come across individuals that have this passion that I mentioned earlier in these organizations over the years, but I'd like to meet and come across more of them, because what I'm saying resonates with certain individuals. I'd like to have it resonate with the entire organization at a company. That would be great. So I know that you can't boil the ocean in one day. I'd just like to close with that. Advice to companies that are listening: don't give up. Keep moving forward and look for the value in what you already have as a starting point.
Bill, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a really busy guy. Really appreciate you coming along and sharing all of your great advice with the listeners. Thank you, Bill. If you just want to say a goodbye yourself before we leave.
Thank you, Stuart, and goodbye. Thanks very much again.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.